In this episode of our photography review show, we're gonna review mixed, macro, and wildlife photographers. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of our photography review show. I hope you had a great week, and I hope you're ready for more photography reviews. Now, if you've never been here before, my name is Jakub, and I'm a professional photographer based in West Sussex, England. For the past 6 or 7 months, I've been reviewing your photos, and I reviewed thousands of images from hundreds of photographers. If you would like to join us for the photography review show, all you need to do is to join our membership Clever Photographer Plus. For a little fee, you will every month get the full bundle of photography tools, including textures, overlays, LUTs, presets, and everything that you can imagine. If you want to find out more about it, make sure you head to our website cleverphotographer.com. So as you can see, we are back in Lightroom CC where we're gonna be doing the reviews. We're gonna start with macro photography from Evgeniy, so let's jump straight into it. Select the image and let's have a look at the camera details. Now for both of them, as far as I know, we're looking at the same camera, Pentax K100D. Now starting with this image right here and the camera setting. ISO 200, 170mm, f5.6 and 1/750th of a second. Now I have to say this is very lovely image. I love the level of details, the sharpness, and also that kind of backlight coming from behind. The blur at the back is also very nice, and looking at the camera setting, I can't really see anything wrong with it. I think the exposure is really nice, so altogether excellent job here. Now moving to the image number 2, same camera when it comes to settings, ISO 200, 300mm, f8, 1/125th of a second. So this is also a beautiful image. I absolutely love the water drops. I think that's looking great. It's a lovely effect, a great level of details, great background, and excellent contrast altogether. The camera setting is great, obviously with the f8 making sure that everything stays in focus, which I think is brilliant. And I think altogether very good. So technically on both of them, very nice. This light here is also very nice. So let's move to the next part, and that's the composition. Now on both of the images, looking at them, I really like the composition. I think this one is really simple. It's directly clear. What's the main subject? What is it we're looking at? The separation from the background is really clear here for multiple different reasons, because of the depth, as well as the color contrast, the luminance. I think it's all working very well here. So as the composition goes, I think it's nice. I quite like the extra space in front of the flower. I think that works nicely too. So altogether, I can't really say much to it because I think it's very well done. Equally on this one, I think it's very smartly done. I really like how the flower is on one side of the image. However, you can see the kind of leftover, not really leftover, but the background with the other flowers, the same flowers, so it's kind of continued, the story goes on, and I think it's very nicely done. I think it's very smart. There is just about enough of the flower in the frame, which I really like. And yeah, the contrast is lovely here. Now, there is very smart use of the really big separation with the soft background, as looking at the flower, there were probably quite similar colors behind, so color wouldn't do the contrast, it's more the depth, and I think that works excellent. So Evgeniy, both of them I'm really happy with. I think the composition is great. I like them both. They are completely different. This is very kind of natural shot, even with the bag. I think it's working great. This is looking more like a studio shot, but both of them works great, and I think the details are amazing. Moving on to post-processing, I really like it again. I think it's very gentle. This one creating the bokeh, the kind of highlight. It's just, and there is a little piece of some light line I'm missing here, but maybe it just wasn't there, so it's not a big deal. Keep an eye on your whites and blacks on your histogram. That's just one thing. Some of them looking really bright, so when I go into the whites and I hold Option or Alt, you can see the white spots. Those are the parts of the image which are a little bit overexposed. You can bring them down by using a highlight slider, or you can use the whites. Just something to kind of keep an eye on, making sure that you have a data across. So I think other than that, I wouldn't really change anything. The white balance is good. The rest of it is good. noise, no sharpness, it's all good. Excellent. Now moving on this one, white balance is very good too. I think the exposure here is a little bit better. I really like the work of the different flowers. The sharpness is excellent, and altogether really, really nice. I also like that there is a little bit of green here, so it's not just completely black background, which would be super contrasty. I think the little bit of a green really make the image stand out even more. Evgeniy, two excellent examples of flower photography, of macro photography. This one, of course, technically well done. This one as well. Excellent job. I'm really impressed, and you should be really happy about the result on this one. Moving on the next photographer, this time mixed team, Zdenek. Zdenek, we have another picture of a tree, which is very, very interesting. I have just finished organizing a trip. We're gonna go to Morocco in November, beginning of November this year. So I'm hoping to see similar landscape. I know maybe not exactly this tree, but when I was finishing the plan today, I was kind of thinking of you and the landscape you send sometimes, because I'm assuming when we go to the south of Morocco, to the desert, that maybe we will see some of the similar views as you sent us from time to time. And then we have the elephant. I wonder if it's the elephant from last time. However, here with a little bit more of elements around him, I think it's very, very nice. Again, a beautiful animal and very well done. So let's jump straight to it. Let's have a look at the camera details, starting with this one. Canon 600D with your 18 to 55 millimeters. Zdenek, I'm starting to be lost with how many cameras you have. Maybe you can just send me a quick message on what is the main gear that you're using, and how come sometimes I come across 2 or 3 different cameras. So what is it you're shooting mostly with? Is it because of the different lenses? It would be quite interesting to know. Looking at this one, 18 to 55 millimeters from the camera setting, ISO 100, spot on. 27 millimeters, that's a good, still quite wide lens, but nice. F10, making sure that everything is sharp. I wonder if you would have gone lower, if maybe the background would be a little bit softer, which in this case would probably help a little. 1/250th of a second on the shutter speed, giving us quite nice exposure, making sure that there is no overexposure or underexposure. So as a camera setting goes, I think it's quite nice. The level of details is lovely, even though we're getting some blue tones on the plant itself. So that's either from sky replacement, or maybe the plant and the tree is actually blue on parts. So you just need to judge that. Technically, other than that, very good. Moving on this image, elephant. So this one is, as I say, different camera. Canon 77D with the lens 24 to 105 and ISO 400, so higher ISO on this one, which I assume, ISO 400, 77 millimeters, which is quite nice zoom, f13, which is quite high. I wonder why you went for the f13, because really, if you would focus on the elephant, you wouldn't need to go as high with the f-stop. Generally, in this situation, I don't think you would have to go too high, unless you are really keen on having even the background in focus, which wouldn't really matter. 1/200th of a second is not the highest for moving animal. He maybe wasn't moving. However, regardless what you've done to the image, the level of details is very decent. I really like this. I think it's nice and sharp. The color is nice. There is not much noise as far as I can see for 400, so that's good as well. So altogether it worked very well. So what I would have done differently, I would have dropped the f-stop to somewhere around 7.1, something like that. That would most likely allow me to bring the ISO down or increase the shutter speed. However, looking at your image, there was no need for the higher shutter speed, so you could have lowered the ISO. That would be my suggestion for that one, Zdenek. Other than that, I think it's all cool. I love the colors, and obviously, as you know, I love wildlife photography of this type. Now, moving to the composition. This one is very, very good. I actually prefer this one because there is the environmental in it. There's the environment in it, and I think that works very nicely. I like the fact that there is a space in front of the elephant, which giving him a little bit of the active space to move into. And obviously with the trees, that gives us a little bit of foreground before we move to the main subject, which is clear. The contrast of the main subject is also really clear, so I think that works super well. So altogether, excellent. Then we move to this one. Now, I know that you're a fan of these kind of shots. I just think that on some of them, maybe I would go for a little bit more space around them. I know that then you have to include other things, but you're starting to go really close to the edges. It's just kind of, I was just painting some images for somebody, and this reminds me the case when the photographer went really close to the edges, and then when you want to print it, mount it, frame it, you go really close and it doesn't look great. So keep an eye on it, just stay a little bit wider. It's always good to have a little bit of extra. Other than that, very good. Now on this one, when it comes to post-processing, Zdenek, I would have a look at the blue, where it's coming from, what is it doing there. If it's the sky replacement, then you need to kind of have a look at it. It's not easy with this type of photo, the sky replacement, so I understand if it is, but that would be my biggest thing to look at, because other than that, it's nice. I think it works together. I think the sky is well chosen. It works. Obviously, the dominant look at it works very well. Maybe just a little linear gradient at the bottom. You know me, I really like to use that just to close the image even further. Add more of a focus on the tree would be something that I would do. We could even try a little radial gradient on the tree with a little bit of extra exposure and do something like that. Zdenek, that would be on that one. I think the biggest thing I would keep an eye on would be the sky replacement. On this one, I wonder if there is a way how we could maybe add a little bit more attention towards the animal. I think lots of attention goes away with the greens. So obviously, as the elephant has this kind of gray brown color, it's not as dominant. However, he is dominant. So what we could do here is some kind of dodge and burn, and we could tune down a little bit the green. So to bring the green down, we would have to go into the color and use the HSL color mixer, how they call it here. So we would go into saturation and bring the green down a little bit together with the yellow. And then I would go into luminance and bring down the yellow and bring down the green. Just make the green a little bit darker. That would be my first thing. And then I would jump in with the brush with a little bit of extra exposure. Always try to stick somewhere around 0.4 to start with and really create quite strong dodge and burn to really highlight the animal all together. So something like this to start with. Perfect. And then create another one, still brush with the exposure down. So we're creating contrast. We remove the contrast from the image, and now we're creating it just on the elephant. So that way the human eyes would focus on it right away. Now we could also still use a brush and add a little bit of texture and clarity again to the animal. Something like this. And then do another brush where we would actually remove texture and clarity from the rest of the image. So then we would make everything else just a little bit softer and do something more like this. Now this is very fast, you would have to take time with it, but I'm sure you're getting my point. So you try to create a contrast between the two elements. And I think as the gray and brown would be really difficult to create contrast to it without completely changing the colors, I would go for contrast between the texture and clarity, for example. Or between the luminance, which we added some dodge and burn to the elephant, and I think it stands out a little bit more. Now to finish it off, of course, as always with me, go to the effects, add a vignette, and happy days for me. Zdenek, thank you so much. I love this image. This one as well. Keep an eye on the sky replacement. And thank you so much for sharing your photos with us. It's always a pleasure for me to review them. And if you have more, make sure you send them next week. Which brings us to the final photographer. Can we have two images from you? Here is the eagle. We continue getting the eagle, which is absolutely epic, Ken. I love it. However, really pixelated. Let's have a look at the camera details. It's not even that small, to be honest. So it's really a shame that we can't get the proper view on it. I think the sharpness is quite decent as well. Maybe if you would send me a raw file next time so I can have a look at it, that would be great. Otherwise, still great capture, beautiful animal, of course. When I look at the camera settings, I don't see anything wrong. I think the ISO 100 is spot on. 6.3 on your f-stop with the 306 millimeters seems to be good as well. Anyway, there is a blue sky behind him, so it's not like you're gonna be creating any depth. So I would go with the f-stop as low as possible, and 1/640th second, making sure that everything is sharp. So maybe it's the camera who create the pixelation, I don't know. Either way, it's a great capture. The camera setting is spot on, and I think it's all good on that part. Moving on this one. Now on this one, Ken, we are on same camera, ISO 200, 252 millimeters, f5.6, 1/200 of a second. The sharpness also isn't great. Ken, my suggestion for some of these images, I think what would really help you is to get application that is called Topaz Sharpen AI. Now I know it's a little bit pricey, but I think for some of your images, and I think that goes for all wildlife photographers, this application or plugin is really brilliant. It can be as a standalone application, so you don't need any software for it. However, it works great as a plugin for Lightroom, Photoshop, and other applications, and it will be really worth it because it will take image like this and really push the details even further. That's what I would do. Other than that, the frog is very, very nice. Now, the thing is, looking at it and kind of moving on composition and talking about the picture in general, the picture is very, very busy for human eyes. And the reason being is that human eyes get automatically attracted by the brightest and whitest part of the image. So looking at the image, even though the frog is there, the first part where the eyes will be looking is all these bright spots right here. Now, I don't know if you shot this through a glass, which probably the case, or why did you get all these elements here? However, they are visible and they really take lots of attention away. So then that creates a really busy scene where your eye is going all over the place until you finally realize that the frog is there. And that's usually kind of a little bit late. So even though I would maybe do a little bit of local adjustments with maybe extra brightness on it, it would be really difficult to bring this away. So that would be just my suggestion and little comment on the composition. On the composition on this one, I would actually not add anything. I think it's a beautiful close shot with a magnificent animal, beautiful, beautiful bird. With lovely space in front of him, which works really, really well. I think the contrast obviously is clear. And for this shot, I think the blue background really works great. So altogether on composition, well done. Now on post-processing, I'm obviously still kind of looking at the fact that maybe the picture is a little bit pixelated, but we could make the background a little more bluer. So for that, we would go into color mixer, into luminance. And in the luminance, we would go into our blue and just make it a little bit darker. And then I would use a brush with a little bit of extra exposure and just make a little more dodge and burn on him to highlight some parts of his body. And then to do the opposite for the darker parts. So something like this. So that's what I would do on this one. On this one, what could we do is to turn it black and white, but then the frog is green and that's the whole point. So I don't think black and white is the choice. We could go heavy on a vignette, like really heavy, and then go into the light and really close the highlights as much as possible. Open up the shadows, a little bit of the shadows, and then just bring back some of the highlights on the frog. So make the highlights brighter with a little bit of exposure and paint over the frog to add more attention to it. Paint it here. I didn't want to do that. Just on the frog. So this is what I would do to it. You could also crop it a little bit closer, even more so. So maybe something like this. So then again, you try to avoid the top. So you would create something like this and maybe end up with the result, which is like this. So Ken, thank you very much for sending us your photos. It's a pleasure to see them. I love the eagles. I think they're beautiful. And the frog is really cool too. I used to live in Australia and absolutely love frogs similar to this. They were always there in the night and I remember coming back around them and just kind of brings a good memories back. So thank you for your images. Stay safe, take care, and I hope to see more images from you next week. And the same goes for all of you folks. If you want to join us for the next episode of a photography review show, all you need to do is to join our membership, Clever Photographer Plus, and you can find out more about it on our website, cleverphotographer.com. For today, thank you very much for watching. My name was Jakub, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.